Welcome back, everybody. We hope you found value in week one, where you learned about the importance of your why and aligning it with your expansion project. We also hope that you enjoyed the exercises and discussion that we had at our cohort meeting. As we go into week two, we're now going to focus on your business. Week two is all about structuring your business for growth. We're going to dive in to the organization. We're going to teach you about some tools that will help you as the leader and owner of the business. We'll help you work through those challenges that you face that lock you down and keep you from moving forward. As we review the content, our challenge to you is to work through each of the workbook exercises, take the time to think about how it applies to your business, take notes, write down your responses, and then come prepared to discuss the information at our cohort meeting. Let's jump into the next week of content.
Let's jump into the business roller coaster. Kyle, I really like to use these whiteboards and just really use it as a visual to discuss some business principles and really ideas in general. Let's start off today, and we're going to kind of start off with this key idea of the business roller coaster. All right. So the business roller coaster, I believe, basically describes everybody's path of entrepreneurship. And ideally, and this is where I think there's a lot of people, as we look at business in general, we'd love for business to just be this upward trajectory of just constant growth, year over year, constant growth here. But the issue is that business isn't that way. It's definitely a roller coaster. So even before, we decide to grow, I meet, as a dentist, I meet with a lot of dentists who are business owners as well. This is how their business looks. So for a dentist, this is the interesting part. Their business looks about like this. They get to a point and then they just kind of coast and maybe grow a little bit. This point right here, I would define as a point of comfort. I think every business owner gets there. It's like, okay, this point of comfort is basically all that they can handle. It's all the business they can handle. It's all their leadership can handle. But most entrepreneurs, if you're like me, and I would say like a lot of entrepreneurs, they want to push past this point of comfort and they want to head down a different path that's full of trajectory and growth. But the issue is that it's never like just a straight line. And so this is where we talk about this business roller coaster, okay? And businesses, I would say if we were to define a business and the roller coaster nature of it, it looks a lot like this shape right here. We come up and then we loop down, we figure some things out, and then we come up again. And then we loop down, figure some things out, and loop up. And it's just the constant roller coaster of figuring things out. And so this is where we talk about needing to define how do we go through the loop-de-loop of the roller coaster? And what are these different points? Because there are 4 main points through each loop that we go through. Am I making this?
Yeah, I would definitely agree to where, all businesses, we wish it was just this continual increase. Things are going well, but, everybody experiences challenges, the ups and downs of business.
Yes, absolutely. So let's get into each one of these points here, okay? As I define, we're just going to do one single loop here. The first point that we're going to come to is what I call the pain point. I'm sure there are several, of our listeners now experiencing a pain point. This pain point is where you either have fear of you don't know how to proceed, and you're either going to, things are going to stay stagnant. And so when something stays stagnant, it doesn't go through the roller coaster. It just stays straight. There's this mental block of how do I grow past this point of pain? Sometimes this point of pain could be the bottleneck. They all of a sudden realize, man, everything in this business is coming through me. And if I'm going to grow, there's no way I can keep going in this direction, because one thing that I know as entrepreneurs, and I want everybody to write this part down, is that entrepreneurs will not grow into chaos. They just simply won't. If we hit a pain point, we don't know how to get through it. There's no way we're going to press forward through it if we don't know how. And so again, entrepreneurs will not grow into chaos, and they have to figure it out. When we hit this pain point, there are three main things that I would say every entrepreneur does at a pain point in their business as they're growing. Let me kind of come up here and get back into these three main things. The first thing that we do when we hit a pain point is we sell. We just simply sell the business. It's like, man, I'm doing well. I've grown. I've hit this pain point. I don't know how to get through it. So we sell the business. I currently have 5 practices, but it was about 2 years ago now, I sold one of my practices. So I would have had 6 at the moment, but I sold a practice because I had hit a pain point with it. It didn't fit my model. I was sick of being the bottleneck for so many decisions. I was not the leader that I needed to be in that practice. I hit a pain point and I just simply sold it. I didn't want to go through this business roller coaster to continue increasing it. Okay.
Well, you saw that opportunity to sell really as a way to relieve yourself from the pain, to stop dealing with it. And so rather than selling it potentially at the best time, you sold it to get rid of a problem.
Exactly. It was a direct consequence of feeling the pain, of hitting this pain point. You're exactly right. And so I've been through, I've experienced this. First thing that we do is we sell. The second thing that we do is we sabotage. All right. There's just certain things that's like we understand that to continue to grow, there's a new standard that we'll have to keep. That's the thing with sabotage is it's this fear. It's like, it's another word here. So there's fear of standard. You've realized that as you're growing, you hit this and you sabotage yourself back down. In some ways, this trajectory of going up, it may trickle down because there's a point of comfort. As I come back here, your point of comfort is right here. I'm going to kind of just highlight this. There's a point of comfort right here. Instead of going through this business roller coaster, what we end up doing is we hit the pain point and come back down to a point of. That's through sabotage. The sabotage happens when we fear the maintenance of a standard that you must maintain to continue to grow. There's a block that comes with that. The third thing that we do where we stall. And the stalling here, this is the paralysis stage, because the sabotage is actually where you come all the way back down. You hit this pain point and then you come back down to a point of comfort. Stalling is just like you just might maintain, just like an even field there. And the stall most definitely comes from like, let's say we're all trying to build a business so that we have a bigger life, and bigger life and everything else that comes with that. And we want to grow it. But maybe you have the dream of a big home on several acres of land, and we hit a pain point, and all of a sudden you stall and you say, well, you know what? I no longer have that dream is nice, but I think I'm going to change my dream. I'm just happy with, half acre and, and a nice little house there. We start to just stall and we start to change our dreams because we don't know how to get through the pain point. The fourth option is simply to go down this business roller coaster. Here's our fourth option here. There's 3 things that we do that most entrepreneurs will do at the pain point, and not a lot of them know how to get through the business roller coaster.
As a business has confronted with, these pain points, these positions where they recognize, either things are difficult and or they need to push and grow more. Really, their options are, I'm just going to sell, get rid of the problem. It's move it off, not deal with it. They may still be making money, but really they're avoiding that pain point. Second one is, I know I need to do more, but doing more requires me to put more money back into my business. It requires me to, work harder and go out and find new customers. And so rather than doing those, they're just going to continue with where they're at. And so they're not losing business, but they're not growing. And so because of that, they're kind of leveled out. The third one would really be, hey, I know what I need to do. And then they really kind of walk up and they see it impact their business and they actually start decreasing. Would that be fair summary?
Absolutely. And sometimes, the stalling one is just like, there's a question that I ask myself often is if I were to sell my organization right now, what's the one thing that the new owner would do to increase business? Sometimes those 1 or 2 things that you would do if you bought your own office or your own business, those are the things that you're stalling on. We've hit this pain point, but we still want to grow. Growing is all just a matter of how do we do it. We're going to go through these kind of 3 points in order to get through the loop-de-loop of the roller coaster and continue on an upward trajectory. This first point is going to be audit, okay? And more specifically, this is a time audit, okay? You've hit a pain point. Obviously, you hit a pain point because you are spending your time doing things. You just don't know where all of it is going, and you just don't know quite what to do with yourself. There's a time audit. You take this overwhelm and you write it down on a piece of paper and you audit your time and you figure out, okay, these are all the things that I'm doing, and you start to define where that pain point might be coming from. You then transfer, okay? So you are auditing your time. You're finding the things that you know immediately you can transfer to team members that are already on your team, or you can outsource to another company to do. Maybe it's marketing. Maybe you've hit a pain point. You can't grow anymore because you got to market. And so you're auditing your time to figure out where can you offload things to maybe spend more time on marketing yourself. Or if you're not going to spend time on marketing, you transfer those things. But you're auditing your time, where you're spending it, and then you're asking yourself, how do I offload all of these items to somebody else? And there's a lot of methods on how we transfer them. And we're going to get into the quadrant exercise, and that's going to really help just the entrepreneurs listening now on how do they transfer and what should they transfer first and what should they transfer second. We'll get into all of that, but you need to audit your time first, because if you don't know what you're doing and how you're spending your time, you don't know what to transfer. The third thing, and this third thing is probably one of the most important ones, is you have to fill your time back up. Like if you've audited your time and you've transferred it all to somebody, if you're going to continue to grow because you're the entrepreneur, you're the one that figures things out, solves problems, and helps the business grow, you have to learn new skills and you have to figure out how to fill your time back up. That's where this point is to fill. You fill your time back up with productive things that are going to help this business grow. You decide to hire an assistant, you transfer all of those administrative duties, and you now fill your time not with admin stuff, but you fill it with marketing or things that are actually going to move the business forward so that you can then continue on that upward trajectory. So you hit the pain point, you then head through the loop-de-loop, you audit your time, transfer those low-cost items to somebody else, you then learn to fill your time. Sometimes learning to fill your time, that's a new skill. Like you might have to learn marketing, you might have to learn leadership, learn delegation. There's different rungs of this growth. You're going to go through this loop-de-loop several times on this roller coaster, this business roller coaster. But you have to learn to fill your time so that you continue to evolve as a person, involving your own skills that help the business grow.
I like when you threw out the question, if somebody else were to buy my business, what's the first thing that they would do?
I ask myself often, like when I built my website out last year, that was one of the things. I was like, my offices were growing, but if I were to buy my business, that's one of the first things I would do. And so I found myself that I was stalling a little bit. I was at a pain point where I knew I needed to continue to grow. Funny enough, I did this very thing and I hired an assistant and was able to offload a lot of things that were just sucking my energy. I filled it with items that helped my business grow. And it's been really fulfilling. But there's moments and several moments in the life cycle of the business where you have to go through this loop-de-loop and audit your time, figure out what to transfer, fill your time back up with productive things, and continue forward. The business roller coaster that you can see here, where essentially every business owner goes through this, and the main thing that I think is important to focus on, like everybody hits a pain point, and we have to ask ourselves, like we talked about before, you have to go through this kind of downward cycle to then pick back up and move past your pain point and proceed forward as a business owner.
It goes along with the whole no pain, no gain.
Exactly.
Or I take 2 steps backwards to move forward.
Absolutely. I mean, and you can see here, like literally, you will feel like your business, like you don't know what you're doing going through the loop-de-loop, but it's important that you do, because if you don't control your time and you don't figure out how to spend time on things that are worthwhile, you won't ever grow your business. You have to do these exercises of auditing your time, figuring out what to transfer, fill your time back up, and proceed forward. So I think it'd be very appropriate to jump into each one of these 3 main parts. I think let's start with time audit. This is one of my favorite things to teach to entrepreneurs. And I think everybody needs to sit down. They need to spend an afternoon. And what I would literally do is you might even spend the day or two before, every half hour to an hour, have a timer that goes off on your watch or on your phone and write down what you did that hour and audit your time. And so you should have a list of things that you've done every single hour for the last 2 days, of like things that just like, and this is everything from answering an email to picking up a phone call to dealing with this fire or that fire. For me, it was drilling on teeth and doing different things. You should have a list of all these things. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take this list and you're going to categorize this list into 4 different quadrants.
All of our businesses who are participating in this is going to be our first exercise that we're going to go through. We'll take time and you'll go through this exercise individually, and then we'll talk about it at our cohort meeting.
Yeah, no, love it. And this is where I think it's fascinating that as you go through this quadrant exercise, everybody's is a little different. I just find this is one of the most productive things that you can do to really define how you want to have your career go. Let's go ahead and define these quadrants. These quadrants, we're going to do a little XY axis here. X-axis there on the horizontal, Y on the vertical, and then we're going to draw some quadrants here. Now, the X-axis, this is what we're going to label as energy. And then we're going to make the Y-axis, we're going to make it green because it's money. We've got quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. With these quadrants, quadrant 1, anything that is in quadrant 1, and essentially on this scale, on this X-axis here, anything that's kind of over here that lies on the X-axis, these are things that suck your energy. These are things that if you're doing them, you feel energy draining out of you like almost immediately. Things that fall on this half of the quadrant here are things that suck your energy. Okay. Now, on the flip side, on this side are things that give you energy. On the Y-axis here, these are things that make you money. Down here, these don't make you money. Up here, they make you money. So as you go through and audit your time, you're going to then start putting little dollar signs by several things that make you money. Then maybe you can just do a big fat negative sign on things that cost you money. What happens is and then you're going to start taking all of these items and you're going to start filling them in to the quadrants. Let's explain what types of things for me. As a dentist and as an entrepreneur growing an organization and a group of growing dental practices, things that fell within quadrant 1, this was note-taking. So clinical notes. This was email. This was tech. There's a lot of tech that goes into healthcare and dentistry and everything else like that. Things that sucked my energy but made me money. Believe it or not, for all those listening, fillings are super intensive. And honestly, let me I'm going to do something here. Fillings, in a way, maybe should be moved down here for me because they don't really make me a lot of money and they suck my energy. I would say hard extractions. Let me change my color here. These are hard extractions, which I actually, in some ways, aren't that bad. So maybe I move them over a little bit, but they make me money. Okay. So let's just say in general, this is dentistry. Okay. I don't mind doing it. I feel like I'm very good at it, but it sucks my energy. Now, the things that give me energy, I love prospecting new practices. I love leadership trainings. Okay. With my teams, a little bit of operations. I love those things. In this quadrant up here, these are things that give me energy. I love meeting with new doctors or selling doctors and figuring out how we can get a deal done. Those things light me up. I wake up in the morning excited to go meet another doctor to see if I can't buy his practice. Okay. Now, this quadrant 3 is an interesting one. And this is where I may even call this quadrant an investment quadrant. These are things that give you energy, but they don't necessarily make you money. They probably most likely take money from you. This would be maybe for a lot of men, golfing or hobbies of fishing, outdoorsmen, different things like that. I would even say family time on the weekends. Those things are important. It's important to spend time in quadrant 3 and invest in yourself. Invest in things that make you better. For a lot of doctors, this is going to continuing education events where they may learn how to do ortho or, really anything, investing in themselves. As a business owner, it's incredibly important to go through this exercise and start to categorize things so that as a business owner, you need to be spending time up here in these quadrants, when you're at work or working. And eventually what you need to do is you need to be offloading everything that falls within this quadrant 1. So quadrant 1 is the delegation quadrant.
These are all things that have to happen. As a dentist, you have to have those notes. That's how you get paid from the insurance companies. You have to, provide the services that your companies need in the dentistry category. Number three, the continuing education, networking with other dentists, definitely a key part of your business. Is it possible that a different dentist would have a different list, that they may organize these? And so is this personally how, the individual filling this out, or, is there a right or wrong place where you're going to put each of these?
There's no right or wrong, zero right or wrong. And a lot of this comes down to your why. We discussed about the importance of having a strong why for why you started in business and why you're doing what you're doing on a daily basis. And so everyone's quadrant is going to look differently. I do this exercise with my doctors, and when they look at the productive quadrant, we're talking, the quadrant up here, they look at this quadrant, and a lot of things that line up in this quadrant for them is implant placements, crown and bridge, maybe a veneer, a set of veneers for a patient. Those are very fulfilling things for doctors, where they can replace teeth that patients were missing. For me, the one thing that lines with me as a dentist, that lines up with me in the productive quadrant, I love doing emergency care. When somebody comes in and I can help them, I find that very rewarding. I find that it gives me energy, and I get to make, decent money with it. I like that part of things. Everyone's is just a little different. But I would say, though, that when we look at the direction, because again, we come back to, the loop-de-loop of the business roller coaster. We've audited our time. We've placed all of our time, we've given each time a dollar sign, and then we've categorized it into our quadrants.
Before we talk about transfer, this is a good opportunity to pause here. At this point, we're going to challenge, everybody to go back and fill out your own individual quadrant exercise.
Now that everybody's spent some time and they've done their own quadrant exercise, we have to ask ourselves, what's the right way to essentially transfer the things that are sucking your energy and not making you money? And that leads us, Kyle, to the very first quadrant that you need to just get off your plate. If you placed anything into this quadrant right here, delegate, and that's why it's called the delegation quadrant. Delegate it immediately. So for me, when I was doing dentistry, clinical notes, I gave those to my assistants immediately. They sucked my energy. I hated writing them. You have to do them, though. I mean, it's part of being a clinician is you have to write notes. So anything that falls within this one, and that is the right order. The first thing that you need to be delegating most likely is everything administratively. Okay. And unless you love the admin, then maybe we'll have to figure something else out for you as far as order goes. But for most entrepreneurs, admin falls within this quadrant one of the delegation quadrant. When we look at the order of how to transfer things, it's from the delegation quadrant. The replacement quadrant goes second, and then you need to be spending, and then you should just live in the productive quadrant and invest your time. As far as an order goes, you should be looking at really spending your time in this type of direction. And of course, scatter time throughout here in the investment quadrant. You need to be transferring those things that are sucking your energy and not making you money. But then you have to learn how to fill your time with more productive activities. And so this is where we come down to a little bit of where I would consider, I'd call this, it's the replacement order of things. Okay. So the first thing here is going to be admin. All right. Second one is delivery. If you look at this quadrant exercise for me, I'm delegating admin first, because that was for me, that was my quadrant. I hated doing admin things. They just didn't make me money. They didn't push my business forward. They just needed to be done. And I needed to hire somebody to do that. But then the second thing that I'm really offloading off my plate is the delivery of the dentistry. It's the delivery of the service that I'm doing.
It's the production for a lot of businesses. If they're involved in the day-to-day production, that would be that number two.
Exactly. It's the production. It's the service. It's everything that they're doing there. The delivery of what you're doing needs to be then offloaded, because again, your time is the constraint. If you're spending time doing admin, you're not making money. And then you get to a point where you can only do so much delivery with your time. You have to start offloading that. Then the next thing that you offload off your plate is going to be marketing. Fourth is going to be sales. And fifth is then going to be leadership. And I apologize for my sloppy handwriting. It goes in this order because that's also in many ways, it's the cheapest thing first and also the most expensive thing to hire for is leadership at the end. But at the same time, it just makes the most sense as you also start looking at the quadrant exercise and you go through this natural progression of like getting admin off your plate, then getting the delivery off your plate. And then you spend time in this productive quadrant where you have to slowly start hiring people to help take up your time there. And the last thing that you're ultimately going to give away there is the leadership of the business. And now granted, you're probably at 5 million plus in revenue at that point, and leadership starts to take a different shape. And that's a whole nother conversation for another time. But essentially, as we look at this business roller coaster, and we look at just the importance of the order of these things, audit your time, transfer admin and delivery first, and then learn to fill your time with marketing, sales, and leadership. And you'll go through this loop of upward projection. And there's many more strategies as you get up there, but these are the basic ones that most people hit and have to learn how to fill when they hit the pain point.
It's interesting, Jordan, because so often, right, as we look at our business expansion projects that we have, the focus is always money, right? I mean, absolutely. I don't mean to say that in a bad way, right? But businesses are there to make money. And so, they look at this as what are things that we can do to increase and, bring more money and more profit into the business. But what you've shared here is really more about time, right?
Yes.
Where can we free up? Where can we allocate these? And then, as we're transferring, it can happen as we outsource. It can happen as we hire. But the key is really, driving at the business owner and how we can give them more time, because in return, that's how they're going to grow their business and ultimately get, more money to align with the growth and the why of why they're in business.
Exactly. And I can't tell you how many times, like I've talked to, my world's in dentistry, but I talk to a lot of other entrepreneurs. When they look at hiring people, it's amazing to me that sometimes the first thing that they look at hiring without doing a quadrant exercise, they're looking at hiring somebody to, hey, if somebody could just do the dentistry for me, then I could do everything else. But what they don't realize is that we don't hire to grow the business. You hire to buy back and that needs to just be a principle that is just ingrained into everybody. And you've got to realize that without doing a proper analysis of your time, like we do with these quadrant exercises, you won't know which hire needs to come first. And I'm telling you, I talked to a dentist today, actually, on the phone. And he was like, I just really want to figure out how to, get out of the chair. And so he's looking at trying to really, he's trying to hire his first hire into his world to grow his business is the replacement quadrant, this quadrant number 2. When in all reality, he's got just too much admin on his plate. And we talked about this. And I said, hey, well, tell me administratively, what are you doing on a daily basis? And he just went through this list. And I'm like, listen, sounds like you just need to hire somebody to take over all of that. Or, to be honest, be a better leader and expect more of your employees and delegate more. Communicate clearly with them and get those things off your plate. Maybe it doesn't even require hiring anybody else, but just have better expectations for your team members. And again, I'll say the phrase, don't hire to grow your business, hire to buy back your time. Now that we've gone over several things, I think it's now appropriate to discuss organizational structure, because at least I know when I started my business, this was something that I found to be a lot of fun. Let's imagine our organizational structure. Let's figure out what I'm going to do. Let's figure out what team members are going to do. First and foremost, I think it's important to distinguish between 2 types of organizational structures. The first one's going to be, all right, what is my current business? What does it look like? And who are the people in my business? And what are their responsibilities? The second one that I think is very important, because as we look at this upward trajectory of growth, again, of course, is only done through the business roller coaster. We have to decide, what does our business, or what do we plan on our business looking like in 5 years? Looking at the organizational structure in 5 years, comparing it to now, it gives you a clear picture on what am I striving to get to. And then as you hit each pain point in this business roller coaster, you in some ways know the challenge and the outcome of that pain point as you work through it, because essentially as you audit your time and then transfer things, you're also auditing your time and transferring some things to people that you're hiring to get your time back and build your business. Organizational structure, two main structures. You have your immediate kind of current situation. How does your business look right now? And then how does your business look like in 5 years? I think it'd be appropriate to go through my business and I'm going to start with, because I think it's important for me to show what did my business look like when I owned my very first practice down in Austin, Texas, and kind of give you my 5-year projection of essentially where I'm at now. When I was down in Austin, Texas, this was my organizational structure. I was the dentist. Underneath me as the dentist, I have my office manager. And we're just going to call her my OM. Underneath my office manager, I had several key roles. We had a secretary, just kind of front office, answered a lot of phones, did some admin that helped my office manager. We had a lead assistant, and then we also had a lead hygienist. Then underneath the assistant, we had a regular dental assistant and another hygienist. All right. And so in a lot of dental offices, this is how it looked. I was the dentist, I had my office manager, and then we had some key roles underneath the office manager, and we ran really simply. As I was looking to grow, I always knew that I was going to have to replace myself, who was delivering that service there, and start adding administrative personnel to my team so that I could then grow. And so looking forward 5 years, this is what I had envisioned. Instead of drawing it over, we're just going to kind of come down here. All right. Currently, right now, when I look at my organization is called HDP, which is Hometown Dental Partners. And underneath Hometown Dental Partners, I am acting CEO. So this is me. I'm just gonna do just a little kind of asterisk to kind of show you the role that I play in each one of these. Now, under Hometown Dental Partners, we have several key personnel here. We have my CFO, CMO for marketing, and COO. Now, I'm going to kind of come down here. For my COO, I then have 5 offices. And each office is going to look like this current structure right here. This current structure right there is my dental office. We just kind of highlighted it in red. And so down here, we're going to have 5 dental offices. Similar structure that you're seeing up here. This is what I had envisioned 5 years later down the road. And it's interesting now because I want to then highlight I am the CMO right now and the COO. Okay. And I play a little bit of dentistry at one of the practices, just a little bit. I'm now 5 years later down the road, and I'm not ready to hand off marketing to somebody. I'm not ready to completely hand off operations to my dental offices. And I am ready to hand off all the dentistry, but also one key personnel in my life that I added that I didn't have in my organizational chart was right here. I have a personal assistant now, which saves my bacon because of all the admin she does to help me stay organized to communicate to my entire team. Now, when you start looking at this entire organization, I think it's important, and each one of you guys can do this now.
Zoom in on the Jordan to Austin example. Going back roughly 5 years ago, you mentioned how you started off and, you're kind of carrying multiple hats. Same thing in the smaller organization. A lot of smaller businesses, they may be that main producer and then also taking on some of the administrative functions. And so, it makes sense in small business that, hey, we get things done that we need to. It's a matter of making everything work. And then over time going through, that process of, ultimately analyzing when you can bring on and offload to other people. When you first started out, were there different pieces that you also, roles or, were you able to just
have that all in place day one?
I was just going to say, you can kind of see I've zoomed in a little bit. And as the dentist, and I was the clinical provider there in the office. And we were there. I started off 3 days a week, and we eventually got to 5 days a week, working some late nights. But on top of being the dentist, I was essentially responsible for all the operations, all the marketing, all the admin. And so I was like, between patients, I'm going into my office and I'm taking a phone call with a marketing company, trying to figure out, all right, hey, how are we going to grow this office? What are we going to do? I'm also coming in early and meeting with my, office manager and some other key team members to, have a little meeting before we started our day. Like I wasn't just the clinical person just doing the dentistry and then going home. Like it was early mornings, late nights, everything was on my plate. It took me a long time to realize that like, hey, while I'm working in the business doing the dentistry, it's as important, if not more important, to take a step back and look at the business as a whole from a 30,000 foot view and work on the business. But I was absolutely involved with every little detail.
As you're developing, in the Jordan of Austin example, how is it that you identify when you need the different positions?
If we were to take this organization here, before I started building out my entire kind of C-suite, because I have a CFO now that works with me on a daily basis, doing all the accounting for all the offices. Essentially what it turned into was, as I had each organizational structure, each one of these dental offices down here at the bottom, I got to 3 practices before I had any other support staff. I remember I had 2 doctors that were running my first office, and then I was doing all the operations for 2 of the other offices and providing the dentistry. While I had offloaded the delivery of the first practice, I was still going to 2 of my other practices and doing the dentistry in both of them. And I was doing 3 days in one, 2 days in the other, and then I'd alternate the next week and do 2 days of one and 3 days in the other. I just hustled until I finally had enough cash to then say, how do I start to hire my administrative team? This is where we talk about, like, I hit a pain point. When I had 3 practices, I was in pain. I had this vision of doing this, but in all reality, if you zoom in on me, I only, at the time, was in this position right here. I had 3 practices, essentially wearing every single hat in all 3 of my practices. I had to audit my time, and I had to then offload everything that was sucking my energy and not making me money.
I wanted to bring up something earlier that you had mentioned before. So when we were talking in the last section, you talked about your pain point. You talked about selling a business.
Yes.
Is it at this point when, you were wearing multiple of the hats, or did that happen earlier?
Well, funny. I hired my CFO at this point when I had 3 practices, and then I went to 4. Okay. And I hit a major pain point. I was just like, I'm not sure I am doing this correctly. Am I being irresponsible? I'm just swamped all day long. My family, I feel like, was taking a hit for my ambition. And that's never, they didn't ask me to do this. They just asked me to be a good provider and a good dad. I hit a pain point. And it was that when I hit 4, that's when I hit a major pain point. And we talk about, hey, when we have these pain points, we do one of 3 things. We sell, sabotage, or stall. And I sold number 4. Like I sold Austin. So Austin sold. I sold it. I harvested that equity, which was a great payday. But at the same time, it allowed me to take a breath and figure out, okay, hey, I hit a pain point and I don't want to hit that pain point again. Before I bought practices, I went from 4 to 3. And then before I bought practices 4 and 5, again, I hired an administrative assistant and I had a little bit more support that offloaded everything in my delegation quadrant. You have to kind of learn through trial and error. I think your question is like very inquisitive and honestly spot on, because I grew, hit a pain point, didn't know what to do, and I sold. Yeah. But now that as I've grown to 5, I feel more organized than ever because I've paid somebody money to free up my time to help me get organized. And it's been beautiful. It's been an awesome thing because now I can do what lights me up, which is the meetings and motivating my team and being that visionary leader that my team needs me to be. It's been an incredible journey so far with 5 practices, and I feel like we're just getting started.
When we set out an organizational chart, it also creates a leadership tool where we're able to assign staff members responsibilities. It creates a feedback opportunity for business owners to be able to hold team members accountable for their position as well. We want to take a pause right here, and we're going to have everybody spend some time thinking about your organization, both today, where you're currently at, and then long term, and what you're wanting to grow and expand into. Everybody has, these growth projects that we've talked about. Go ahead and map out what your organization is today. Even if you are wearing multiple of those hats, map out every position, in your company, and then do a second one as it flows into where you're trying to go.
Now that we've talked about organizational structure, and this is a fun part because it's fun to imagine how your business is going to look in 5 years, I think it's now appropriate to bring up the importance of core values. And with this principle of that we should be hiring and firing according to the core values that you've established for your business.
It's a great thing to bring up. We hear companies a lot of times say, talk about their core values. It's one that I don't see businesses incorporate into their business, right? And really use them. And so I'm really curious to see how you've done this in your business, and then how you've been able to scale it through multiple different locations.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's kind of like a hot button to push. Well, like according to my core values, but are they really growing their business according to their core values? I would say you hire and you fire according to them. But to share with you mine, I have this little diagram of Hometown Dental Partners and our core values that we have in my organization. And we live and die by these core values. Let me go over them with you. This first one right here, is clear communication. Clear communication is important to us because not only do we need to be communicating with our patients well and making sure that they're understanding the treatment that they need to make sure that their mouth and body is healthy, but we need to be communicating with each other clearly. If you are upset with a teammate or upset with how things are going on, like communication is the only thing that solves those quarrels. And so clear communication is one of our core values. This one right here is this balance, and this is what we call extreme ownership. When we talk extreme ownership, sometimes there's something that we have things that happen in the offices. We have upset patients or different things that take place. I tell each one of my team members, you may not feel like that upset patient that you were directly responsible for the patient being upset, but I need you to be 100% take responsibility for that patient being upset. What could have you done differently to help that patient have a better experience? And when we start owning everything in our life, that's when things start to get better because it's the only thing that you can control. We preach extreme ownership. This farm one here, I'm a farm boy. This is just hard work. I expect all my team members to, hey, you show up and you work hard. You clock in, you're responsible with your time, and you just work hard. This last one here is what we call positive energy. I am an early morning person. I love this logo of the sun because I feel like as you start each day off with intention, that leads to just a positive day. That's where we built that up. But those are my core values. And the way that I integrate all these into my business is that we have core value shout outs every Wednesday at all of my offices. And throughout the week, we have other team members nominating their team members for exuding one of the 4 core values. I may have my hygienist notice that the assistant is getting there early and making sure that everything is set up for the day. She's just working hard and she'll put her name in a hat. Every Wednesday, we'll draw somebody's name, give them a t-shirt with the core value logo on it, and just really celebrate living these core values. It would be appropriate to also point out that I have fired employees for not exuding positive energy. I've had an employee where they constantly brought negative energy into the office. They brought their own personal problems going on at home into the office. And yes, they were written up, and yes, they were warned. And we told them, hey, listen, Like your energy is bringing everybody else down and we need you to bring it up or this isn't going to be a happy marriage. They continue to violate that core value and we let them go on it because we're just not going to deal with cancer. We're not going to deal with people that don't communicate clearly, that don't take ownership over everything in their lives. When I say fire and hire according to the core values, I live it. You have to protect your culture. When you have a team that lives your core values, it's magical. When we talk about, like, again, this team that you're building out, that you have now, and the one that you're building into, just ensure that your core values they truly do represent who you are. They have to be true. They can't just be made up, but that you also help instill those core values into your organization and hire and fire based off of them. These are mine, and these are kind of my thoughts on core values.
I think it's really cool how, one, you have them, and that they do relate back to you as the person. I know you really well. I have a lot of experience working with you, and you can see that these really are part of who you are. And you're then able to transfer this into your business. It sounds, as you're talking and using these examples, that you regularly bring these up, right? Aren't a surprise to anybody. Your staff begins using these same core values that, they're able to almost change the lingo of the office to these key items that ultimately push forward the mission. So often, we hear companies that they'll create core values and they really don't mean anything, right? I guess one of the questions that I have is any thought as far as help to the businesses as they go to create them, right? Should they only have a certain number? What are the best ways of kind of rolling this out and kind of helping them implement this into their business?
Two thoughts for you there that I think would be important for every entrepreneur here listening is, first and foremost, keep it simple so that your team, as you talk to them about your core values, that they can remember them. And the other thing is that you can change your core values. It's okay. You don't have to have 4 defined ones that you built logos on. Like, I had 5 several years ago and I whittled it down to 4 because just one of them just didn't really resonate with me. It sounded good. I don't even remember what it was now. It's okay to like drop one and add one, or be like, hey, for this year, we're adding in this one because we need this as a team. Like, it's okay. I do think the one thing that I would always encourage every entrepreneur to do, though, is that as you're looking to build a culture, whether you add one or take it away, don't go 10 or 20. Like, that's too much. People are just going to think it's crazy. Keep it simple. 3 to 5, I think, is the magic number there. You need to build it into your regular meeting cadence, whether you're having huddles with your teams in the morning or however it is. Make sure you're building this into your week-to-week interaction with your team so that you're hitting these core values home.
We're going to pause it here and we'll challenge everybody, pull out the workbooks and take some time and come up with what those characteristics or qualities that really are most important to your organization. Write them down. These will become your core values.